All right, so we are going to start with what we call slope-intercept form. You guys have heard of slope-intercept form before, right? Does anybody remember what it looks like? Y equals mx plus b. Perfect. Okay, that is our slope-intercept form. That is how we can write an equation of a line if we have the slope and we have the y-intercept. That y-intercept is where it crosses the y-axis. In that equation, m represents what? The slope. And b represents my y-intercept. Okay, so in the equation, y equals mx plus b. M is where we put the slope. B is where we put the y-intercept. So at first, we're going to be given a picture of a graph, and we're going to ask to write it in slope-intercept form. So I need two things. I need the slope, and I need the y-intercept. So let's start with the slope. I want you to count off your slope just like you did in your homework yesterday. From one point to the next, what would our slope be? Take a minute and count on that first picture what your slope would be. By looking at it, we should tell it's what kind of slope, positive or negative? Positive, because we're going upstairs, and then you just need to count rise over run. How many do we go up and how many do we go over? I'm going to start at this bottom point down here. I'm going to go up 1, 2, 3, 4 spots, and then I go over 2, correct? Does everybody see that on your paper? Up 4 over 2? And we always want to simplify our slope. What does 4 over 2 simplify to be? 2. Then we need our y-intercept. We need to know where it crosses the y-axis. So if you'll remember, we discussed this yesterday. Which one is the y, the horizontal or the vertical? The vertical. So I'm looking at this axis here. What number does it cross that y-axis? What number is that? Negative 3. Does everybody know how to get negative 3? The origin is 0, 0. It's down 3 units, which makes that a negative 3. Now we have everything we need to write on our equation. So it is going to be y equals, what's my slope? 2x. And then if my b is negative, I can either write it as plus a negative, or I can just write it as minus. Does that make sense? If you prefer, if it makes more sense to you, you can write it as 2x plus a negative 3 if you want to, if my pen would write. Okay, it's just more simplified to write it as 2x minus 3. And that's all I'm asking you to do. Find the slope, find the y-intercept, and plug those into our equation. So if you will, take a minute and do number 2. Find your slope, find your y-intercept, and then plug those values into our equation. What kind of slope is this one going to be? Negative 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Did y'all get a negative 4/5? And where does it cross my y-axis? What number? Negative 2. So my equation would be y equals perfect. Negative 4/5 x minus 2. Is everybody okay with that? So from a graph, count your slope, choose your y-intercept, plug those values in. You can also write an equation in that next example. I give you the slope and I give you the y-intercept. So write your equations there. You don't have to do any work. You're just plugging your numbers in. So for that first one, A and B, I want you to go ahead and write your equation in slope-intercept form. A says the slope is -3, B and the y-intercept is 4, so write that equation. And then for B, it says my slope is 0 and my y-intercept is -2. I want you to write that equation. All right, for A, my slope is -3, my y-intercept is a +4. My equation would be y equals, -3x plus 4. -3 goes in for my M, +4 goes in for my B. With B, it says my slope is 0 and my y-intercept is -2. What would that one look like? Y equals 0x minus 2. Is that what I saw a lot of people? Okay, let me ask you a question. If I multiply x by 0, what happens to it? It turns to 0. So there is a more simplified version of this equation. If my slope is 0, that 0x basically just disappears. And the more simplified version is just y equals -2. I would accept this equation because it's not wrong, but this is the most simplified form. So like on the EOC, they would give you the y equals -2, not the 0x minus 2. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Does that make a little bit of sense?
Would it be wrong?
For me, no.
You're saying like on the EOC.
On the EOC, they probably wouldn't even give you that option as an answer. You know what I'm saying? So unless it was one that you wrote in, but if it's multiple choice, there's both. There's some multiple choice questions and some that are not. So far, so good? All right, now we have another type of equation. Slope-intercept form is used when we are given a slope and a y-intercept, but we can also write equations if I'm just given a point and a slope. But before we do that, right here under the formula, it has that asterisk where it says make sure you always distribute and solve for y. We are not going to do that, so you can just cross that out. You can distribute and solve for y, but I'm not going to make you do that, so I just want you to cross that little asterisk sentence out that's underneath that line. So again, point slope form is used to write an equation when you were given a point and a slope, and it looks like this. Y minus y1 equals m, and then parentheses x minus x1. So y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. When we plug numbers in, okay, your point, your x1 and your y1 get plugged in here and here. And then your slope will get plugged in for m. The remaining parts of the equation will stay as they are. Only those highlighted portions are where we plug numbers in. Is everybody ready? All right, so let's take example number 1. We are given the ordered pair 4, 1, and we are given the slope of 2. So here's the first thing. You remember how we found our slope yesterday? I told you to label your ordered pairs. Let's label our ordered pair here. It's going to be x1 and y1. What's the matter? Oh, okay. All right, everybody ready? Yeah. So we're going to plug it into our formula. The first thing is y minus, what did I label y1 as? 1. equals m, which is what in this case? 2 in the parenthesis, x minus, what did I label as x1? Is that an equation? Did I plug my point and my slope in? It really depends on how they ask for the answer. If they want it in slope intercept, that's when you would solve it for y. I'm not going to make you do that, so we can just leave our answer just like that. Okay, so try that second one for me. Label your ordered pair as x1 and y1. Your slope is always m. And then we can plug it in. It's going to be y minus 4 equals, what's my m? Parentheses x minus, what's my x1? Again, I'm not asking you to change its form, so we just leave it like that. Now, on your quiz next week, test next week, I will give you the formulas. I will give you your slope formula that we learned yesterday. I will give you point slope, and I will give you slope intercept. You just have to know which ones to use, okay? So you don't have to worry about memorizing those formulas. Is everybody ready? Okay, we are still continuing to write equations, but this time it says we're given 2 points. We are given -3 and 7, and we're given 1 and -1. Go ahead, Alex.
So is this one we label x1 and then x2?
Now here's a question. In order to write an equation in point slope form, I have to have a point and a slope. What do I not have for this question? I don't have a slope. Do we know how to find a slope with 2 points? Yes. So we're going to have to do a little bit more work for these. We're going to have to find our slope first using that formula that we talked about yesterday. This is where we want to label our 2 ordered pairs, x1, y1, x2, y2. Plug those into our formula to find the slope. That should be the very first thing we do. I can't write an equation with point slope form if I don't have the slope. Y goes on top. You talking about in the slope formula or the point slope? Y. Y2 minus y1. Labeled my points x1, y1, x2, y2. I can now plug those in to find my slope. Y2 I labeled was -1, minus y1 was 7. X2 was 1, minus x1 is -3. -1 minus 7 is -8. 1 minus a -3 is 1 plus 3, which is 4. What does that simplify to be? -2. Is that my answer? I have to write my equation still. The thing is I actually have 2 points. Do I need to use them both to write my equation? No. Do you think it really matters which one I use? No. We can probably just use the one that we already have labeled as x1, y1. That way we don't get confused when we plug things in. So let's do that. It is y minus, what is my y1 value? 7 equals, what's my slope? Times x minus, what is my x1 value? -3. The only thing is, you could leave it as minus a negative, and yes, that would be correct, but what's the best way to write minus a negative? What happens when you minus a negative? What does it turn? Positive. So that technically should be x plus 3 in that parenthesis. Okay, because we minused a -3, which turns it to plus. Again, if you leave it as minus a negative, that's not going to be wrong. It's just more proper to write it as plus. I could have also written the equation using the other point, but I don't want to confuse you, so we're going to stick to the ones that we had labeled x1, y1. I want you to try number 4. Same thing. Find the slope first, and then once you get the slope, plug in that slope and your equation, your point into point slope form. Because in your formula, it's already a minus. So when you plug in y2 minus y1 minus that negative, and then just make sure you That's right here? Yes. All right, if I label my ordered pairs, x1, y1, x2, y2, and I plug them into my slope formula, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And again, when we minus a negative, what do those turn? Positive. So at the top, what is -4 plus 7 going to give me? 3. And at the bottom, 3 plus 6 is 9. Can 3 and 9 both divide by something? What? So that turns into a 1/3. And then, so now I have my slope. I'm going to use my ordered pair that I already have labeled as x1, y1, so I don't have to change anything. Y minus what kind of 7? And again, when you minus a negative, it turns positive, equals my slope of 1/3 times x minus, what's my x1? Okay, again, minus a negative turns to positive, and that is what the equation will look like. So far, so good. Okay. All right, we have 2 more things to talk about. That is the equation of a vertical line and the equation of a horizontal line, and what those actually look like when we write them with variables. So I want you to look at this first line It is a vertical line. We talked yesterday. It says that has what kind of slope? Vertical line has an undefined slope. Okay, that's not what it's asking me for, though. It's asking me for the equation of the line, right? Do you think I can plug in an undefined value into an equation? Okay, so I can't plug that into the slope for an equation. And also, do I have a y-intercept on that? Does my yellow line cross the y-axis at all? It doesn't, does it? So this is just something you're going to have to remember. If you have a vertical line, your equation is going to always be x equals wherever it crosses the x-axis, okay? My origin is right here. That's my 0, 0. So if I go to the left 1, what number is that on my x-axis? Left 1 means negative 1. Okay. If I had a vertical line that crossed the x-axis at 5, it would be x equals 5. That is just something you have to memorize. A vertical line has an equation of x equals wherever it crosses the x-axis. Okay, that's what it says all right here. Make sense?
Yeah.
On the next one, this is a horizontal line, and we talked yesterday that those have what kind of slope? A 0 slope. Didn't we just plug in a 0 slope a minute ago? Didn't we plug in a 0 slope? So let's talk about it. Where does it cross the y-axis? What's the y-intercept? What's that point right there? 3. Okay, so it would be y equals, if a slope is 0, 0x plus 3, but we talked about the more simplified version of that. That's really just y equals 3. So a vertical line has an equation of x equals where it crosses the x-axis. A horizontal line has the equation of y equals wherever it crosses the y-axis. Say that one more time. Oh, so if you look on your graph, here is here's the origin. That's 0, 0. So it went up 3, so that's a positive 3. Your positive numbers go up, your negative numbers go down on your y-axis. Does that make sense? Okay. Does anybody have any questions? All right.